Welcome to Moveable Dough. This is Steve Danielson. Each week on Moveable Dough, I sit down with a composer to talk about their lives, their musical journeys, and, of course, their music. Come with me as we explore each unique path into composition and what they have to share with the world. For a complete archive of episodes, as well as access to the shorter segments called Movable Snippets, visit my website, sdcompose.com/movabledough. Hey, this is Steve. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Moveable Dough. My guest today is Diederik van der Laag. Diederik is a composer from Utrecht in the Netherlands. Since his first choral work premiered in 2015, his mission has been to innovate choral music in a way that touches both the mind and the heart. Diederik has been part of many different musical ensembles. He played the drums, guitars, keys, and vocals in dozens of projects. Diederik van der Laag, welcome to Moveable Dough.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
So I mentioned that your first choral piece was premiered in 2015, but I'd like to start further back than that. When did you first start making music?
I think that was at the age of 12 when I was starting to dip my feet into what was going to become a very alternative scene of guitar players and bands. Okay. Mainly all kinds of metal genres, rock and roll, that kind of stuff.
So did you start on guitar or vocals, or what were you doing?
I did, definitely. Yeah. My mom bought me a very nice classical guitar that I still have, that's over there. Basically, I asked for it because I saw my friends shredding on whatever gear they had. And I was the youngest. I had no clue what they were doing. And honestly, when I got the guitar, I didn't really know what to do with it. Like, it took me a while to even figure out what the frets were for, that kind of stuff. And yeah, all went from there. Then I started figuring it out, started writing songs, and started playing in bands. And then I found myself in positions where I was allowed to write songs for these bands. And yeah, to some extent, I think that has been the foundation layer of the joy of composing that was sparked.
Sure.
Yeah.
So did you learn to read music during this time as well?
Not at all. No, I was just like into tabs, just whatever you could use to. I think what we would use back then to write stuff down was this program called Guitar Pro. Oh, it's funny thinking back to that. It's like it was so. I just pop, rock, metal, that kind of stuff. I wasn't into classical stuff at all. I like my parents, they were, or rather my mom. But no, I was just shredding on the guitar, doing some vocals, which are hardly capable of passing as vocals. It was very like just the very heavy metal scene. That really was what I was into, and it was great. I found some people over there that were just as dedicated as I was about music, and I kind of felt like, oh, this is where I belong, you know? Like this is people really want to do this, which is something that I missed a bit elsewhere.
Yeah. Were there certain bands that were influencing you?
Yeah. I would at some point when I was 12, I started listening to like just the Metallica, the Korn, that kind of stuff. Progressed increasingly towards more black metal kind of stuff. Then some prog metal came into the scene. And I think it was only when I turned 15 that I started mellowing down a bit more, gradually descending into Britpop, some jazz, some bossa nova. And it was a slow descent, so to say. Yeah.
So then what made you switch to like choral composition?
Yeah, I think there's some components to it. First, my way of doing music in general is just trying to figuring it out from scratch. And I think if you're playing guitar in situations like I did, or drums, which I did as well, the only way to do it. I also had teachers, but just being fascinated by the music that you hear to an extent that I was just like figuring it out until you got what you're actually hearing. or find these tabs somewhere in a very weird website, or you just do your research. And till then, I was able to get away with it without reading any single note. And then there were some pieces by a very famous Dutch composer coming along, for multiple pianos. It's been sort of the Dutch minimal music icon, so to speak.
Okay.
And that's when I figured out, like, I'm not gonna be able to do this without learning how to read notes. So here it is. I finally met my moment, you know.
Sure.
And
So did you study it in school, or where did you learn to read?
No, not at all. There was just like me and a couple of friends. We were just geeking at it until we could play it, and then we
Nice.
performed it a couple of times. And it was a weird piece to learn how to read notes, because like you know, 5 flats all the time. Yeah, like 5/10, sorry, 10/16 signature, that kind of stuff.
Nothing like
Yeah.
diving right in, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how I do it, I guess. Yeah. And so that's component number one. Component number two is that I spent some time in how to call it, a monastery in France, a place in the south of France where a lot of youngsters gather to basically you know, engage in meaningful conversations with other people from totally different walks of life, totally different countries, totally different cultures. And they, in order to bring all these people together, because myself, I don't have a Christian background, and the people that go there that do, they encompass the whole spectrum, so to speak. So the people that are running the place, they figured out that they needed to find ways to make music that addresses all of that. So there is a lot of 4-part vocal music in there that's very simple, but addresses a lot of different styles of language, Christian taste, so to speak.
Sure.
And that's where there's also some Orthodox Russian stuff that's in there. So it's kind of like a tiny little, the music over there is a tiny little tasting menu of what religious 4-part music could be. It's very simple. A lot of like choral purists won't have it whatsoever, and I totally get that. But it did spark, I think, the feeling of singing that with could be up in the thousands over there. The sense of belonging and community that comes with it. Yeah, I think from there, very gradually later on, I think that must have been one of the tipping points. Yeah.
Sure. So what is it about choral music that sort of spoke to you, said, I want to do this?
I don't know. Like, obviously I could say stuff like, oh yeah, the voice is the instrument that is in here. That is the and I do think that it has a sound with a resonance that is sort of going directly in there, rather than an instrument that's outside of a person, so to speak. And whenever we have these kind of discussions, then there's also people coming up with like, yeah, but sometimes there's brass players that can do the very same thing, and then I'm like, yeah, you're totally right. So it's hard. It's hard to really say it. But I do know that I'm fascinated. I'm not going to be bored with it whatsoever. This is what I'm going to do until I can't do it anymore.
Sure.
I think there is some space in there for innovation with the sound of vocal music, and I think a part of it also is that there are so many layers of the scene to dive into. At first, you encounter the classics of choral singing, then there is a bit more modern stuff, then there's the American school, then some minimalism, and then it gets freaky, and then yeah, all of these sounds. I think what I like about the voice is that it can express so many different sounds. The like I don't know, a voice David Lang cantata versus like a full blown Rachmaninoff setting. It's so different, but it's still a voice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So as you were sort of beginning this process of writing choral music, were there any composers that sort of influenced you as you developed your style?
Yeah. I'm not really sure actually. Like it took a while for me to find like my inspiration, so to speak.
Hmm.
I think I tried writing some stuff back when I was 17, 18. That was kind of Baroque music, um, and trying to find a way to get it into the modern era
Uh-huh.
harmonically, and it's not a very original idea, I think, but it was what I fed on back then.
Right.
Then I tried to get into conservatory with that idea, and they also weren't really keen on it. So for a while, I was like, well, that's what I want to do, but it's not really relevant to the world right now. So then I stopped composing kind of for a couple of years and got back into it when I was 23. And that's from there it started taking off again. I found myself a wonderful private teacher that has been guiding me for I think a good 6 years back then.
Okay.
And he would like start feeding me composers that were like just out of my scope of what was uh, I knew nothing basically. I didn't know anything, and I remember the first time that David Lang or John Tavener came up, and it really took like a couple of days to attune my ears to it, even though it's not the weirdest stuff out there, far
Right.
from it. And then, but definitely these two names, John Tavener, David Lang, they will always be very dear to my heart. The music that they write. Um, yeah, I think. Are there other vocal composers? I mean, Whitaker can't be missed, obviously, but yeah, there were some people in the American school that I've been studying quite a bit, Lawrence and
Hmm.
Whitaker, that kind of stuff. Rachmaninoff. I think there is some Asian waltz. He was somebody that what I used to do is just get the scores and just copy them by hand to sort of get a feel of like, oh,
Right.
what is it like to write these notes, even if it's like decades or a century old music. That's sort of like, but like that's a neat way to sort of get it into my system.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've done the same thing.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, I did that with Bach. I was trying to figure out what he was doing, and I was sort of writing out one of the Kyries from one of his passions. Said, I gotta figure this out.
Yeah, cheers. It's highly recommended. If anyone out there is feeling like figuring stuff out, you can just it's open source. It's out there.
Yeah.
You can just copy it.
So when you do sit down to write a new piece, how do you begin? Do you have a routine that you follow?
Um, Not that much. What I do find myself is if there is vaguely there's like first there's the hunt for a text,
Hmm.
might be coming from the commissioner, most likely not at all. And I find myself in the library or browsing through a catalog of whatever I can find. I will sort of narrow it down to a specific author, go from there, and then find a a text or a poem that I like, and then try to connect to it, because usually like if I would read it like that, it wouldn't really do it for me all the way. So I spend just some time with it, just painting it or translating it, or yeah, find ways to relate to it, so to speak. And then um, from there, it's free game. Could be that it's that I wanna have a vertical impression of it, like get the harmonics out there, and then use that as the cornerstone of the wall composition. Um, yeah, sometimes yeah, I would just be sketching, a bunch of stuff on paper. I really like the feeling of paper. Then at some point dragging it into Finale, probably not liking it, starting all over from scratch. Yeah, it's a weird going back and forth. I mean, you must know that as a composer yourself. Sometimes I wonder how we even do it. It's
Yeah.
very this sort of self, like being your own editor, and I mean this goes for a lot of other different kind of work as well. But it's sort of weird being your own, like, green or red light.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that because I'm in the middle of working on a piece and just came to the point where I said, I don't like anything that I've written so far.
Oh
I'm
man,
gonna scrap the whole thing.
oh, I feel you. What is the piece for?
Oh, it's for a competition that I decided to write something for. So
Oh,
we'll see. We'll see if I
competition.
finish something by the deadline.
Competitions are the best for like bringing this up. I felt like
Yeah.
they make for very extreme dynamics in the process. But it's like,
Yeah. So I just had
all right.
a quick question. What time of day do you get your best work done? Are you a morning composer, a night composer? When do you compose best?
Yeah, definitely not morning. That's for sure. I um like, do you mean when I compose best or whether I compose my best work? Because that would be different
Either
answers.
one. Either one. I'm interested in both of those.
Okay, well, when I compose best, that would be like I could be pretty structural. Like there is a piece that we're gonna be listening to later that I uh, kind of approached like a 9 to 5 job
Uh-huh.
and um, structured the work out like that. But I think the best ideas do come on whenever they want to come, and in my case, that's usually like out of office hours. That is, yeah, I it's funny because I recently saw a concert of 20 very talented young composers that were kind of incorporating the question on when do I compose best into their concert, and like none of them said morning or midday, or it's yeah, I guess we're all night owls. It's and I'm no exception. I wish I wasn't, but it's definitely the truth. Yeah.
Awesome.
There is something about the night, or about sort of this moment when the world slows down and quiets up, and the mystery of it that can slip into your work. That's
Sure.
yeah,
So when those
it's a
ideas
gold
do
mine.
come, do you jot them down or record them on your phone, or how do you capture those ideas?
Um, Usually not recording it on my phone. I tried that. It doesn't really work for me. I really try to write it down. Usually the idea is way quicker than I can write. So
Uh-huh.
that's a battle against time. But whatever I can get, there will be enough, definitely. I try experimenting with writing pieces with a piano or pieces like with no external feedback whatsoever, and do it from imagination, so to speak. So if I'm at the piano, I can kind of get the feeling of the harmonics in my system, and
Right.
see what then I kind of remember the piece, or well, not the whole piece, but the idea of the concept of the very first beginning as a muscle memory.
Sure.
um, and then we'll drag it to um, yeah. I sometimes I look back at my like these drafts and these papers and these books that are full of jotted notes. They yeah, it's kind of funny. Some look so neat, like, and when you're so clear about this idea, like, oh, this could have been like some sort of Victorian handwriting, and then Then there's a bunch of papers that look like this guy was panicking. He he was trying to hold on to something that was
That's
slipping
right.
away.
That's
Both there.
fantastic. All right. Well, before we take a quick break, I'm going to ask my guests here to play a quick game that this week we're calling Put a Smile on That Face. I'm going to ask you a series of 5 true or false statements about Ludwig van Beethoven, the happiest German composer I know. You're a winner just for playing the game, so just do your best.
Cheers.
True or false? Beethoven was bad at math.
Oof. I'm gonna go with true.
That is true. He left school at age 11 knowing how to add and subtract, but not how to multiply or divide.
Yes.
All right. Number 2. True or false? Beethoven's last words were, "I shall hear music in heaven."
That sounds like a very cool thing to put at the end of a biography. That doesn't necessarily mean it's true. I'm gonna go for true though.
Well, it's actually false. There's very little evidence to support the claim that those were his last words. According to a witness who was there, upon learning that a publisher had sent him a case of red wine, he said, "Pity, pity, too late."
Wow.
All right. Number 3. True or false? Beethoven studied music with both Mozart and Haydn.
I think he met Mozart. About Haydn, I'm not sure. I'm gonna go for true.
Well, it's actually false. He did study actually with Haydn. We know that he traveled to Vienna to meet Mozart, but there's no evidence that they actually met. So,
Right.
yeah.
I'm definitely a contemporary composer. You can already tell.
All right. Number 4. Sorry. True or false? Beethoven's Third Symphony was originally dedicated to Napoleon Bonaparte, but he changed the dedication after Napoleon crowned himself emperor.
Wow. That's such a cool story. I'm going to go with true.
That is true. He was very disappointed in the pride and hubris of Napoleon. Said, "Forget it. No longer for you."
Yeah, I can get where he's coming from.
Yeah. All right. And number 5, true or false? His bagatelle number 25, usually called Für Elise, was dedicated to Elise Behrensfeld, a soprano and friend of Beethoven.
Soprano and friend of Beethoven. Might be a trick question. I'm gonna say false.
It is false. Most likely. The dedication originally read Für Therese, but a hasty copywriter accidentally changed it to something else. Therese was most likely Therese Malfatti, to whom Beethoven proposed in the year that he wrote the piece. She actually owned the manuscript, so most likely it was originally Für Therese.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. I learned a lot.
Awesome. Well, thank you for playing the game. Again, like I said, you already won just for playing. So after we take a quick break, we are going to listen to some of Diederik's compositions. Hey, this is Steve. I know you're sitting here listening to Moveable Dough and you're thinking to yourself, how could I make a podcast, Steve? Well, let me tell you. Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. Okay, here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or your computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you could start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I've really enjoyed the flexibility that it allows me in creating my podcast. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Welcome back. This is Steve Danielson. I'm talking today with Diederik van der Laag. Our first piece today, we're going to talk about Il Dorment. I'm not sure if I said that right. French is not my strong language. Translates to they sleep. So tell us, what is the story behind this piece?
Yeah, there's different ways of. I mean, at this point, I found different people, different French people, naming it differently. Il dorme. That's kind of what I make of it right now.
Okay.
Okay. So it's 20 19, and there is a memorial concert coming up in Leiden, a very nice Dutch town. And there is this vocal ensemble over there called Irrevocable. And what they've been doing for a couple of years prior to that as well is embed we have a national 2 minutes of silence at 8 o'clock as a commemoration of the fallen of initially the Second World War, and lately I think other wars included. Correct me if I'm wrong, whoever's listening. But it's a very magical way of embedding that very serious kind of sacred moment in the Dutch calendar with choral music. It's kind of like a vocal hug. It's so great. So I was commissioned to write a piece for that, and well, we just talked about how to get to a text, got into the library, just pondered through a lot of war poetry, basically, especially the First World War. The war poets was a creative group that I think they were later on called the war poets, but a bunch of poets that were expressing their feelings about the First World War was collected. So I basically read all of those, and the most of them are pretty graphic and pretty up in your face graphic. I mean, to my liking, that is. And then I found this very, very, very nice symbolic poem by this French poet called Chadour, and I immediately fell in love with it. And then I started combining that poetry input with reading a lot of like diary input from youngsters during the Second World War in the Netherlands. So I found some books that were very good at sort of collecting diary inputs from many young people from all sorts of walks of life and from all sorts of stances in the war as well. So you could kind of see the war unfold through very, very different perspectives chronologically, and that was for me also the first time that I could really, really internally connect with sort of what it must be like to have been there, because I do know the dates and I know the numbers, but they are kind of they're overwhelming. Mm-hmm. So this was a very nice way to really connect with that, and that turned out to be this piece written for double chorus, one of them being the full chorus and the other one actually a quartet, 4 soloists that represent a family of that recently lost one of their dear ones. And that's what the song is about loss, about commemoration, about community around the community, and supporting the process of grief.
Gotcha. So They Sleep is referring to the people that they lost in the war.
Yes, okay. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to listen to a performance of Il Dôme, performed here by a vocal ensemble Cordier with Jurian Posse conductor. Our second piece today, Miksma e tapa anast, why I don't kill myself in Estonian. So what is this piece about, and what do you hope listeners will get out of it?
Ah, sweet. This is the very first piece that I ever wrote that also ever got performed. I got commissioned. Well, got commissioned. I uh, I asked if I could write for a choir without any experience or whatsoever. So, and they surprisingly said yes. It's yeah, and then they told me about doing concerts, Baltic music theme.
Okay.
And that's when I figured out that I know this one Estonian poem by heart, which is Miks ma ei tapa ennast, sest ma ei taha, which was presented to me by a very dear friend back when I was living in France. We were just browsing through some Estonian poetry. He was from Estonia, and
Okay.
then this one popped up, and we were both like, "That's some strong stuff. We love it." So that always stuck with me. You asked, "What do I want the listener to take away from it?"
Yeah.
I To me it was a bit of a almost like a cleansing thing to write that thing, because I was coming from a pretty I felt kind of stranded before that in my life. I had been battling like some serious illnesses that withdrew me from a big part of my social life, and I started sort of getting back into the game, and this piece kind of underlined that. I remember this piece was being performed in Mount Shasta once by Greg Eastman, and I happened to be there. And then I got in front of these kids over there, and then they asked me the same thing of like, what's it about? What do we need to do with it? And then I think about 80% of the piece really describes like sort of the hardship of not really being able to connect with life, not really being able to uh, really find your way through the multitude of problems that life presents, whether they are in your personal life or globally. There's a lot going on, and like that's not news, but it's pretty rough. So it's kind of like an homage to that, and then it's only like in the very very last bars that there is a bit of a victory moment there. That's
Mm-hmm.
I that's what I told the kids back there as well. Like, I mean, like for a long while, I thought sort of the baseline of my life was gonna be a pretty poor quality, and then like during the process of writing this piece, it kind of skyrocketed. I was like, okay, so if I can get out of there, that's then a lot of great things are possible.
That's great. Okay, well, we are going to listen to Mix My Tapa Nast, performed again by Vocal Ensemble Cordier.
Mix, mix, my
All right. Our third piece today, I Hope You Grow. So you describe this piece as a mix of a lullaby and a lament with a sprinkling of Gregorian chant. The opening lines of the
Yeah,
piece is, I hope you grow. I hope you are nourished by the storms that roll by. I hope you nurture yourself, your every fiber of being. So I understand that a friend of yours wrote these very hopeful words. Tell us about writing this piece and what it means to you.
definitely. Yeah, it's Emily Viertaler. She's a great friend of mine, and in my opinion, a very, very, very great poet. Um, we have been um, actually performing a lot side by side in different contexts,
Mm.
concerts and theater. Um, I was in Mexico visiting my girlfriend when I wrote this piece, and um, it was winter. It was my first time, having a warm December in my life, and I think that culminated in my most productive winter ever. Um, so we just talked about sort of the way that the notes look on a piece. I for some reason I found the notes of this piece the other day, and they look super neat. They look very, very free. Um, and I think it wasn't that hard of a piece to sort of produce. I had this idea of playing with um, Gregorian chant, or at least that notation, and see what
Uh-huh.
what I could do with it. And yeah, it's always nice to have a new idea. Like it kind of makes for a fresh start and
Sure.
less sort of doubting about it. Um, so that's I remember writing this piece as a very playful experience, just having this one new idea that I haven't tried before, and just counting on my beginner's luck at it.
Sure. So was this a commission that they asked for something in particular, or was this just something you were working on as a
This
passion project, or
well, last 1.5 years, a good friend of mine, Hank Stuten, and we got some money from the local government to create a series of what we would call vocal labs. So we would get together a group of very well trained singers uh, from the range of 10 to 20, like an ensemble like that, quite small.
mm-hmm.
And we would have them for a weekend and bombard them with world premieres, not only by ourselves but also of other composers. And so it was a pressure cooker. Like they had to get that rehearsals, concert, and recording were all in the same weekend.
Wow.
So it was a very cool experience also for myself to learn more about the production of those kind of events and see if we were actually up for the task, because it was quite a bit, but it was lovely. It was so I basically commissioned my own work for these situations,
Okay.
and this is one of them. Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, well, we are going to listen to I Hope You Grow, here performed by La Colombe with Isan Raikov conductor.
By
right, our fourth piece today, Safe and Sound. So this is another piece that you wrote with text from your friend Emily, and also another piece that you did for the Vocal Lab initiative. So what sort of challenges did you face as you wrote this piece, Safe and Sound?
It's um, it, it's funny how these two pieces are both pieces that I wrote in the same period, in under the Mexican sun, which is might be the reason why I don't remember them as fairly challenging. I think that yeah, it's the challenges I found with this specific piece. I could tell you about a lot of other challenges, but this one kind of came out quite like that. It was a very smooth thing,
Oh, that's nice.
which is kind of rare actually.
Yeah. So tell
Just
me
one
about this.
sitting.
Tell me about this piece. What is it about?
It's part of a trilogy. It's there are three. I cut one of her poems up into three segments and then wrote like a little cycle on it. The total cycle is called Glass House, and it was written for this occasion that was kind of questioning whether nature is a place where we like wonder and where we feel safe and feel inspired, or whether it also encompasses danger and what does nature mean to us? That was basically the underlying question of that specific project. And I think in this specific poem that she wrote, both of these things are in it. Sort of the the wonderfulness of personally, I experience nature as one of the main reasons that one of the main places to charge up and get back into battle. But it was kind of cool to sort of pinpoint different relationships to it from different people and see how that would translate to music. Obviously, Safe and Sound is a very joyful, component to it. The joys of nature, feeling embraced by being there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to listen to the Vocal Lab performance of Safe and Sound with Jurian Posey conducting. All right. Well, Diederik, what are you working on now that you could tell us about?
Oh, there's a bunch of very interesting combinations going on. Like a commission for choir, an electric guitar plus a bunch of effects, which is very exciting for me as someone who started out as an electric guitarist.
Right.
Then there is a commission for a piece for choir, and I don't really know how to translate it. Like we call it draaiorgel, like an organ that you basically manually. How would you say
Crank
that in English?
like to crank it or
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like
okay.
that's the way that you
Sort of
that you
like a
fuel it, so
pump
to speak.
organ where you're pumping the air in to the organ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that something that doesn't like in I
We don't
remember as a kid, I would see those things on the street once in a while. It was a rare sight, but they would be there. It's kind of like a blast from the past, these things.
right. Yeah, you sort of have the image of like a crank organ with the guy out there with his monkey.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
Okay.
monkeys over here though, but apart from that, yeah. But that's what they wanted. Which is very exciting. Like all kinds of new so I'm in the process of figuring out how we're gonna do that, or in case of the electric guitar stuff. Like yesterday, I had a wonderful conversation with the guy who's gonna perform the guitar part, Stefan Gerritsen, and he yeah we just browsed through all his gear and we're just see what could we do with it, what kind of textures would be complementary to the vocal stuff that I was writing. And yeah, I think there's more stuff like that coming on. Also, some a cappella commissions, and some of my works being performed abroad this summer. So that's gonna be very fun. But especially, I kind of feel like there's a hunger for trying new stuff, being innovative, being experimenting with different kinds of what vocal performance could be, especially within the classical genre, because jazz and pop are a little bit ahead of us. I sometimes I feel like that, and I really like where the whole scene is going. Where there has been this festival called Leading Voices in my place. That was kind of, in my experience, all about it, all about seeing where could we take choral music, where could we take vocal music in a way that it's gonna be like very relevant for people that are not into that stuff at all. What else can we do with it? How can we not break away from the main concept of a vocal performance just for the sake of doing that, but how can we enrich it or embellish it with other experiential impulses? And I think there's so much to do there still. So I kind of find myself also in roles of it's kind of a meta composer, like to sort of contributing a piece, or kind of programming the whole concert.
Sure.
At some point.
Very cool. Well, I look forward to seeing some of the stuff that you come up with. So if my listeners want to learn more about you and your music, could you tell us your website, social media? How do we find you?
Definitely. Yeah. My website is Diederik van der Laag .nl. I think .com also works. I have both.
Okay.
Please find me on YouTube. There's a bunch of new cool stuff out there. Diederik van der Laag. I really hope that my name's in the show notes because it's not the easiest.
It will be.
Instagram, posting a lot on there as well. Same name, same me.
All right, sounds good. Well, hey, listeners out there, please help support the work I'm doing here at Moveable Dough. I don't have a staff, I just have me. For less than $1 a month, you can help me keep the music moving. Join other listeners like you by visiting anchor.fm/Moveable Dough and clicking support. Your contribution to the Moveable Dough project is invaluable and appreciated. Again, that's anchor.fm/Moveable Dough and click support. Well, Diederik, thank you so much for joining me today on Moveable Dough.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for this great work that you're putting out.
Oh, thank you. My guest today was composer Diederik van der Laag. If you have a recommendation for a future guest or an idea for the show, please email me at movabledough@gmail.com. This is Steve Danielson. Keep the music moving.